My kids are always wearing like a psychotic outfit. Like they are
Tell
like
me
my
more,
no,
like-
they have like my kids wear princess dresses every day. I mean, my kids are in costume all the time, and I can't understand it, and it doesn't feel like something I should understand, so I just go with it.
Right.
But they're just very, they go to New Orleans so often. They go to Mardi Gras every year. They go to Jazz Fest, but they've kind of like taken it too far. Like.
The following podcast is a Healthy Dog production. Welcome to the Healthy Dog Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nigma Talib. I'm a leading naturopathic doctor now for over 20 years, and I've consulted thousands of patients with chronic illnesses. I've had clinics all over the world, and I have a #1 bestseller, Younger Skin Starts in the Gut. Listen, I know there's a lot of health information out there in the health and wellness world, and it can be a bit overwhelming. So I'm here to set the record straight and give you my expertise along with my expert guests here in studio in sunny Los Angeles.
I only take drugs with other people who take them on a regular basis because I don't have time for that.
A lot of chronic diseases stem from mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yes. And you know what I love talking about, right? Poop.
Yes. You can ask me about my poop?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about poop.
Okay, please.
This podcast is your go-to for achieving optimal wellness from the best of beauty and longevity and everything in between, because after all, wellness comes from the inside out. Welcome to the Healthy Dog Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nigma Talib. My next guest is an absolutely beautiful human being. She has been called the poet of our generation by Time magazine, and she's a New York Times best-selling author. Her many books are Heart Talk, Where to Begin, What the Road Said, Remember Love, May You Love, and Be Loved. Gosh, all those titles themselves are so poetic. Cleo, please welcome Cleo Wade to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan of yours. I have to admit, I am one of the people who, I might be outing myself here, but I have a lot of people that I follow on Instagram who are muted, where I don't actually see what they do, because I feel like sometimes once you follow, you don't want to diss them by unfollowing, because that feels very dramatic.
Yes.
But then you're kind of like, but I don't know if I need a day-to-day update here. But let me just tell you, I am a big follow. Like, even when I walked in, I was like, what was that thing you just did? And did you just give a facial to this person, or did you just do da-da-da-da? I was like, well, I always want to know every treatment you're doing. We have all of your products in our house. Simon loves your stuff.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
such a fan.
Well, I am over the moon excited to hear that, because I am a big fan. I feel like all of your, everything that you do, it really touches the heart. I would say, if I were to name you, you would feel like, to me, a modern day Rumi. I mean, that's the level that your poetry touches my heart. And I sometimes could cry when I'm reading some of it. So it is, anyone who hasn't read her books, we're going to get into them in a minute. So thank you for being here. I've been like literally counting the days down.
Oh my gosh.
And what I love most about your writing is that it really does help, look at vibrations of hope, resilience. And I know you're also an activist for things that you really believe strongly in. And that, is I think, so important. But with every poet, there's always a background story of like, how did you get into start writing such beautiful poetry?
Well, when I was very young, when I was a little girl growing up in New Orleans, I went to a poetry summer camp, it was a creative arts summer camp, and I took a poetry class. But it was really funny because I wanted to take the class when I was maybe 6 or 7. I was really young, and I did it I did it for a few years in a row. So I think I did it probably until I was maybe 11. But I am and was the kid who is like very obsessed with sleep. Like, and I don't know if it's because my parents, if something was wrong with me, and I see like, or I was having a moment, an emotional, like a really big emotionally expressive moment. My parents would tell me I was tired, or you just need to lay down, and I feel to this day that a nap can fix pretty much anything, or at least just give a fresh start. And even one of my biggest mantras in my life to this day is, okay, let me sleep on it, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And even then, I remember being a kid, my mom always jokes the first day of school, when I had a first full day of school, I just came in. And I was just exhausted. She could see it. You know, when you see on someone's face how much the day had wrung them out. And I remember going to this camp and it was 5 periods long. And I even thought to myself, that's a long day. And I'd heard that in this poetry class, you got to take a nap, which I know now was meditation. Is that she actually had you do a meditation in the class?
Got it.
But I didn't understand what that was. I mean, I'm like a hick from Louisiana. I was like, oh, I think you get to lay down in the dark and, and so.
Wait, I hated nap time.
Yeah.
You loved it.
Any nap. If I could have I will take any reset. I
How
joke.
old were you?
So I'm probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, yes, I would love to do this. I need the nap.
Okay.
And so I go into this poetry class and I meditate for the first time, not knowing that that's what it was. The poetry teacher said, you're wondering how do you write a poem? And it wasn't really, it was actually a camp at a kind of fancy school, but it wasn't that fancy in its ideas. It wasn't, one of those things where I think a lot of schooling things in places like New York or LA is very much like how you get ahead. And it wasn't like that. It was actually just where all of the kind of eccentric teachers of New Orleans like taught during the summer. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, you're taking the poetry class so that one day that you can become the poet and you can get a head start on there's not like a head start culture. It was more of there's a woman who liked to do creative writing and you could just do the class. And so we did, and she asked this question to the class. She said, when we asked her, how do you write a poem or what is a poem? And she goes, just start writing. And I want you to think of things you've never seen before. I want you to, if you can envision a bird, and I want you to just describe a bird, the one bird you've never seen. And I remember thinking that it was this space of there's no way to get this wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think in a culture or someone, I wasn't I wasn't a person who really resonated with my school setting, or I wasn't the straight A student in class and I didn't thrive in the classroom at all. I was like, wow, this space that in creativity, in the arts, you can start in the space of no wrong or right and however you want to express yourself. And so while I didn't spend my childhood writing poetry, and I didn't really even write poems again until my early 20s, I always remembered that it was this space of, I think, and that's why poetry was my entryway before I started writing essays or before I started writing op-eds or anything else, because it felt like as long as you were being honest and really trying to have this unique perspective on what you were either witnessing, feeling, or thinking about, it was correct.
Right. It felt authentic.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. And your writing is just, it comes out in a way where there's just no wrong or right. Like there's no judgment. And, for example, with the children's book, and I actually find this really interesting because I'm an adult reading this book to a child and I enjoy reading it. And I'm finding there's so many lessons in there for me, not just for the child. And, also things like, being weird. And like you say how it's important to be weird. And actually, that's so interesting you say that, because I always used to say that as a kid. The more weird somebody was, the more I liked them. Because it was something so unique to them and their story that was so authentic. And it wasn't just cookie cutter, because I've never had a cookie cutter life. Everything I've done has always been weird, all of a sudden, going into naturopathic medicine, 20 years ago was weird, right? So when you talk about weird, tell me, where did that come from for you?
I think a lot of that comes from probably growing up in New Orleans. It's a culture of deep expression that's really celebratory. So you're in the streets and you're in costume and you're dancing and I was just in the kitchen with my mom and my brother last night talking about how multi-generational New Orleans is socially, that, you go to Jazz Fest and whether you're 2, you're 20, or you're 80, you're all there listening to the same music, wanting to try the same foods. And there's this real centered culture around eating and dancing and feeling and laughing and really wanting to have joy and fun. And so I think that in that, you're at Mardi Gras and you're dancing in the street and you're wearing a tutu and you've got face paint on, and it's a pretty weird. It's a culture that really, and it weaves weirdness into everything. And I think also, it's really interesting because with uniqueness, and I'm sure you deal with this a lot in your work, it's like most people, and I think especially in a world that asks us or tells us, if you just homogenize, if you just try to look like everyone else or erase these parts of yourself or these features or these this or you're that, then you'll be happy. And then all of a sudden you actually wake up and you feel like you're in a constant ever flowing identity crisis because you've erased your identity. And then I think women especially want to try to find a way to return to that identity by saying, oh, that thing that everyone always made fun of me as a kid, my lips were big as a kid and I always felt weird about that. And then I'm actually wanting to embrace that now, or this way in which, I think even for me, a lot of why I am not someone who typically wears a lot of makeup, or unless I have to wear. I've
You don't need to. You're like stunning,
no.
by the way. You guys, she's like stunning.
But it's, you just are like, you have to remember, for me, I'm always like, I set the bar on how much my face means or doesn't mean, and somebody else can't, right?
Right.
So if like every time I'm kind of, and by the way, whether that's with or without makeup, that's not even a judgment, because at the end of the day, also adornment and celebrating and painting and
Sure.
and adding all of these beautiful things to ourselves is also a part of that choice we make, But I think especially, and it really, I saw this a lot when I moved to Los Angeles, is that culturally it really begs you to try to be, have homogenize and have this kind of sameness as everyone else. And it's really been interesting, I think, to see when and how people rebel against that and their weirdness, to say like, oh no, I really love this part of my body. I don't want to change it because it's on trend to have it be a different way, or and that's been a really interesting thing about living here. Do you feel that you see that a lot in the people that you treat? They're like, they have these kind of almost homecomings to self. I see it a lot with my girlfriends where they're like, I used to do XYZ. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I like that my face does this, or my eyebrows do that, or my body does this. And that's okay.
It's a brilliant question, because I do see it with my patients, and that's why they come to me, is because they want to be the best version of themselves without altering the version of themselves, which as people continue to do Botox and fillers, what happens is the practitioner then has a morph of what that person needs to look like. And then it changes the relationship with, how you see yourself and how the practitioner sees you. So I do feel like most of my patients need to be able to move their face. Yeah. And so they come to me for treatments that are non-invasive, but that are going to encourage their own collagen and elasticity. And also, more importantly, I am a naturopathic doctor, so I treat the root cause of what's going on, like at the cellular level. So why are we aging prematurely versus aging gracefully, right? I'm 52 and I'm happy to be 50. I never want to be anything other than my age, and I'm proud of my age. So I think a lot of my patients are the same.
And what I really love about your practice is that I think you really reflect to people that it's an inside job that turns, that shows itself outside, but it really is an inside job. And I think that with beauty, I remember asking, I was talking to this actress I love, Sanaa Lathan, and she's so beautiful. And I remember saying to her one day, I was like, so can you tell me, are you doing like the most or the least? And I basically said to her, why are you so pretty? I was like, why do you look like this? Like how? Like is it everything or is it nothing?
Yeah.
And she goes, I promise you. And Sanaa's, I don't remember how old she is, and she was like, I promise you that by the time you're my age, you realize that every way that someone looks is a product of how they are treating themselves inside, whether that's emotionally, with food, it's how they behave towards others. Everything inside is what is showing up on your face. And she was like, and all I can say is I just take care of what's going on inside. I was shook because she's so pretty. I was like, alrighty then, I will go to therapy tomorrow and start getting this inside all cleaned out.
I've built my entire clinical philosophy and even wrote a book called Younger Skin Starts in the Gut around one simple truth. If your gut isn't optimal, nothing else works. Genova Diagnostics GI Effects Test is the gold standard in functional stool testing, mapping your microbiome, digestion, inflammation, and nutrient absorption with clinical precision. It's a crappy job, but someone has to do it. And no one does it better than Genova. Visit genovaconnect.com and use my code HEALTHYDOC15 for 15% off your first stool test. I mean, I personally think you look above average, nor even above, this. You're stunning. Like you're absolutely glowing from the inside out and so down to earth. And speaking of which, what are your daily routines? Like, what are your beauty hacks? I didn't plan to ask you this question, but I'd be interested to know.
I think that it's like I don't just want to say less is more, but I think you can have a strategy around what your less is.
Okay.
Right?
I like that.
Rather than or specific is more, maybe. Like a specific thing, the specific strategies you have rather than doing a ton of stuff. And so I think that for me, I think more about skincare than I would ever think about makeup. And if I think about makeup, I only think about what I feel isn't going to be an irritant, right? So, I think if I have to put makeup on because I'm going to something fancy and I have to, then whatever, that's so rare for me that you wash it off and whatever. But I think that if I was traveling or using my own things, I'll probably use makeup. I like Gucci Westman's makeup a lot because it's very, she had, rosacea. And so I think so much of everything she developed was to not activate like that type of sensitivity, which I think is just beneficial for everyone, whether you have that or you don't. And then I think it's really like, your electrolytes and things like that. I mean, we use the vitamin C cocktail at my house. And but it helps. I mean, being hydrated, drinking water, being outside, relaxing. I mean, all the kind of free stuff, if you can get a handle on the free stuff, which is sleeping, fresh air, water, the things in which you feel that you can be closer to nature, I do think that shows up in this, the ways in which stress manufactures itself manifests itself on your face or in your being or whatever. And so I think that if you can find the ways in which you're the most in flow with nature, and then you can align with whether it's products or things that are just enhancing your water or whatever you're having to also be more deeply kind of grounded in nature, all those things. I'm like, the closest you can get to being a flower or a tree, I think, is probably what's going to show up the best on your face. It's so true. Because we are a living, breathing thing, and we aren't, a robot, and we aren't AI. Do you know what I mean? And so
thank God.
I think, I'm down for whatever your get down is, because like a happy person is a healthier person for our healthy environment. So if all those things make you happy and that flows for you, that is amazing. Yeah. And because I love you as a neighbor or person in my community, I want health for you too. Like I want your health to match your happiness.
Yes.
And so my wonderings around that was like, how do we just make sure that we are giving ourselves nutrients? Like even if you just put flowers in your house, most of the time they're going to come with a little pack of things to just put in that little pot, so that you can
nourish them.
Nourish them.
Grow.
And so you do want those things that, like, I always talk to my friends. I'm like, well, as long as it makes you feel juicy, it's probably good. Do you know? Like,
not like a great raisin versus a grape.
Exactly.
Right?
Like you want those kind of juicy, like, there's, and like it kind of feels good to, like, my mom was like, why are you taking I drink chlorophyll a few times a day. She's like, why are you doing that? I was like, I don't know. I just feel like if this is what makes a plant green, it's got to be something that is good for me. Like, do you know?
Sign me up for some chlorophyll, everyone.
Yes. Like, or she'll be like, or we'll have like, what did we have? I was taking some, I've been really into chlorophyll and like seaweed, like algae lately. And I was like, well, algae and mushrooms are these like really smart, weird things.
Yeah.
Like they've been around forever. I'm like, the fact that the ocean is probably the closest thing to outer space and this like just giant, weird, prehistoric, freaky place like down below where like, and the seaweed has been living this long like this. Like, yeah, I kind of do want to eat it. Like, I don't know. Like if I see like, you'll see these mushrooms and I'm like, wow, you guys are like, what do you guys even like do down there that you grow? Or like I was joking. I was like, you'll just walk past a field and there'll be no mushrooms and you'll wake up the next morning and then like 40 have sprouted. And you're like, how does that even happen? Like, I was like, they're so smart that I'm like, yeah, it feels like something you should probably eat. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't want to eat them out of a field because I don't want to eat the wrong mushrooms, but I'm like, when you see them, you're like, even when you look at them, there's something where if you're even remotely in tune to nature, you're kind of like, these things look like they're like they know what they're doing. I don't know.
They know something we don't know.
Yeah, like,
right?
Or trees hold hands, like their roots hold hands under the ground.
Yeah.
Like you kind of want to be like, whatever you guys are doing, I think I should be kind of like on that wavelength.
This should be another book for you, Cleo.
I feel like a pretty hippie book. They'd be like, okay.
No. Like I really think there's something in that. People are, I think anything that is exactly what you said, that's in nature, we need to like embrace that. And I think a lot of us are finally moving back to that, where nature, Mother Nature is, whatever we can feed to a plant to make it grow is something we should be feeding ourselves, not just drug medications.
And also it's hard because it's really hard to understand where to go when you only focus on your no's, right? So when we're like, no processed foods, no this, no that, no that. Right. And then it's like, okay, but then like, but what am I supposed to then do? Right. So if I was somewhere recently and someone gave a talk and they're just like, the worst thing you can do is like have like fluoride in your toothpaste. And I was like, okay, but then can you just recommend the one we should use? Or, you actually just need we need routes towards these really big yeses.
Right.
Rather than like this like constant flow of
confusion.
What is a no? Like, and I'm down for the no's. Like I'm down for like the Doritos being a no. Like I get that. Okay. And I hate it. But,
I know.
But I'm down, but I'm also like, point me towards why, like just eating a potato then or a sweet potato is just like a hell yes. Like just help me like I think that's the conversation people need more, which is like, well, it's probably just best if you can to just eat something that like just went, if you want to be as close to being Mother Nature as possible because she's your mother, then like it's probably easiest to just have something she handed to you rather than something that like was taken, brought to a lab, wrapped in capitalist consumption, whatever, like so that somebody else could get rich and you could get sick and then sell you a medicine. It's like instead of putting you in a system, you could live outside of a system and like be in like this kind of natural flow of the kind of brilliance of the earth, right? Like it's pretty, like Mother Nature is so intelligent and brilliant. It grows an acorn into an oak tree, and that is unbelievable. And so the idea that we're not kind of obsessed with that closeness and that intimacy, I think that's kind of the best starting point, I would say.
True wellness lives in the smallest details: the air you breathe, the water you wash with, and the surfaces you touch. That's why Koala Eco, with their beautiful botanical ranges for home, laundry, body, and even pets, is the only brand I trust. Elegant living without compromise. Visit koalaeco.com, that's KOALAECO.com, and use my code HealthyDog15 for 15% off your first order. And it's so interesting you bring this up because I think I heard you say somewhere, like, how did a banana become a bad guy? Right? Because people are like, can't have bananas because they're high on the glycemic index. And
all those things change all the time. It used to be like, you should only have an egg white. And then it's like, well, all these nutrients are in the yolk. So and also the idea that you're like, well, nature, I was going on a walk in my canyon, and you just see the ways in which these like vibrant oranges and reds appear as the leaves are turning in fall. Chase color in your foods. Like, why would you take the yolk out? Like, why would you remove color and have a plate full of beige when we live in this vibrant world of color that is naturally occurring? We should actually be chasing the color. We should be like
eating the rainbow,
truly. And so it's kind of like, but I think that those things also happen so that, we can, again, it's like when like guru meets capitalism, unfortunately, right? Like, it's like, as long as there's like a new guru villainizing a food or this or that, then there's like a new following towards that thing.
Do you think things are changing though? Do you think people are waking up and that we're going to have more restrictions on food industries? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because you have two young kids, so, it's important to you.
My hope is, I think there's a few things I hope is that, one, I feel like there's so much emotional work to be done around food, which is that, it's probably the emotional detachment that is most important. So even when I'm raising my own kids, I'm very much like, I don't, I wouldn't give them something because something happened. So whether it was good or bad, I wouldn't say like, oh, you made it to the doctor and you didn't cry, so there you get ice cream. I'd rather kind of give it to them at a random time because I don't want them to feel that their life experiences are attached to anything that is like not something that comes within or is maybe even at the very least relational. And so I think that if we can kind of do the work to release these like emotional attachments to, I had the breakup or the bad day or the this, so the only thing that might help is the XYZ. I think that like whether that's whatever the numbing thing is, right? Whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's whatever it could be. And so I think that there's an emotional layer. I really hope for more restrictions, but in this like our political climate, I can't see it happening in this country anyway. And I think also, what you hope is that, the most interesting thing about eating in a life-affirming way is the more you do it, the more you want to do it. It's like, I don't know if you notice that it's like if you've been on like a real because you can fall out of your kick no matter how great you are at eating. It's like all it takes is like 2 travel days, right? To be all of a sudden like, I just didn't have any of those things and everything I ate was a bar or like some type of like processed version of like how to have that snack in its most like whole way.
Yes. You're like, I did my best.
Yes. And your best is good enough, right? Right. And, so when you fall out of it and then you fall back in, you're like, oh my gosh. I always say this, I was like, it feels good to like feel good. And so you do keep going as much as you can if you fall in. And on the flip side, it's hard because when you fall out, it's kind of hard to stay out too.
It's so true because a lot of my patients say to me, I didn't know how good I could feel until I did your plan or until I started this. And then once they're on that trajectory, everything in their life falls into place. If they're like wanting a soulmate, that soulmate arrives because the right soulmate arrives because you're now taking care of you, right? Yeah. When we don't take care of ourselves and, we look outwards, we're not going to get that special person or we're not going to get that special job that we want. Like it's all, it feels like a lot of your work has just been so much about, looking inside and really like you can see it in your work. It's pretty amazing. I did have a giggle though on one of the pages. You said, even if it's just one bite to the broccoli, it was like, and I love that because it's what you said earlier, like you don't want your kids to be associating themselves to, you've got to eat this, you know? And even if it's just one bite, because if they had the one bite and they actually liked it, they might eat it more,
Well, and again, it's like, it's not an over attachment. Like, you're not so good if you ate it all, the broccoli. You're not so bad if like you could only get the bite in. It's really about saying like, this idea that we can reframe how we relate to food, right? Is like, well, we should try one bite because life is about experiencing things and being either pleasantly surprised or knowing what we do or don't like. And you'll never know if you don't try. And so this idea that we can put trying into the way in which we eat and live and do, instead of saying like, I know I don't like this because, there's not, what is it, that the kind of like famous Carol DeWitt line that's like, there's no difference between like, life is not about divided between the smart people and the dumb people, but the learners and the non-learners. So if you don't if you're not at the table asking your kids to at least try, then you're also saying, well, it's okay if you don't want to be a learner. And I do think that there is it is harder to exist, succeed, or thrive in the world when you don't want to learn. And so I think trying is a manifestation of that. But again, I think it's more about being like, yeah, just try it. Like I had my first kind of babysitter when I had had my kids. I can't remember which one of my kids, but they weren't eating or something. And she goes, it's okay. That baby ain't going to starve himself. Like, she's like, I've never met a baby that starved themselves. And I was like, you are so right. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm actually wrapping this in like stress and this and that. And, but because you've seen a million babies, this baby isn't going to starve himself. Like, and that we're just going to like, and it's maybe not exactly what I think it should be as they were switching to solids or whatever, but they're not going to starve themselves. And
it's so true. I mean, I do the same with him when I had to switch his food. And the vet's like, he'll eat when he's hungry. I promise. And, he went on a 2-day hunger strike. He's really ridiculous.
He just didn't like the food?
He hated the food because he came to me with irritable bowel disease.
Oh.
So I've done everything from putting him into hyperbaric chambers to like,
obsessed.
I mean, you know what I mean? Anything to keep this dog optimal. So he Another one added to the list, Dante. He loves
super fan.
From PMS to perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause, I've lived through it all. And through every stage, one thing becomes clear. Hormone fluctuations change how our bodies regulate temperature, especially at night. When your body overheats, even slightly, it disrupts deep, restorative sleep. The kind of sleep your hormones, metabolism, and mood depend on. That's why I can't live without my Rani Lounge pajamas. Their advanced technology activates natural fibers, making the fabric moisture-resistant, naturally fresh, and ultra-breathable, allowing your body to stay cool and regulate temperature the way nature intended. Better temperature control means deeper sleep, better recovery, and a body that feels truly at ease. Whether at home or traveling, staying cool, fresh, and comfortable has never felt so effortless. Go to RaniLounge.com, that's RaniLounge.com, and use my code HealthyDog15 and get 15% off your first order and experience sleep the way it was meant to be. I want to go back to something, and it's about you really are open about your postpartum postpartum depression. And you talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Can you tell us sort of what that was like for you? And, given the fact that women don't talk about it because they don't even know they're actually going through it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about it for maybe some people that are listening and some sort of, what they need to look out for and what you went through?
I think some of the hardest part about any type of depression is naming that it is depression. When even though you are going through depression, you still have to function. So, not everyone has the opportunity to go into like zero functionality when they feel depressed, right? And so especially if you're a new mom or parent, it's like you're going and going and going, but you're just wondering why you don't feel like yourself. And you're wondering why nothing kind of like when you laugh, the laugh doesn't feel as hearty. It's like, you feel that there's this kind of ever-present fog. You feel this fatigue that doesn't ever seem to go away. You feel, and it manifests in so many different ways. You feel anxiety and you're not really sure why. You feel a loneliness, although you're kind of with your family and your friends are around. You feel an overwhelm. You also feel this kind of like, only I can do it and I've just got to get it done. And that which adds to the loneliness. And it's really hard to ask people to help you do anything. So then you actually put yourself in this corner of saying like making it all worse because you are trying to go it alone. And so I think, for me going through it with both of my kids, and actually both times it felt very different, like I think with Memphis, my first daughter, it was this feeling of this constant like overwhelm that turned into this kind of like uptightness. And actually like I think that we don't talk about the ways in which which I'm sure is more of like a postpartum anxiety that feels like depression, but it's like you're just tense. And if you don't feel that you're like a tense person, you're just kind of like, it's got to be, and da-da-da, and ba-da-da, and your reactions are tense, and you're kind of wrapped in like judgment and tension.
Do you think it's because it was a first child? Do you think it was?
I think it was a combination of so many things. I mean, obviously, a lot of these things are just the ways in which you hormonally and chemically arrive.
Fair enough, yes.
And it was during, I had my daughter in January 2020, so it was the pandemic. Like, has just started to fly in like 2 months later. And so I think there was a little bit of like, wow, I have this very vulnerable thing in my, like in my arms, and we're not even sure like, why is like Italy shutting down, and why are we shutting down, and then why is everyone in a mask, and it was kind of like, how am I supposed to have her do a doctor's appointment, and everything was so strange during that time, and so I think that there was probably an uptightness there, and then I think also you don't, so much of being in postpartum is like you have to have things that really like shake up the routine that your nervous system falls into. So like you have to just kind of like pick the day where you just start doing the damn workout class or the whatever, or you pick the day where like someone else takes the baby and you're just going to sit through that whole lunch and like have whatever you want, or if you want to like sit and have wine with your girlfriends or do whatever you want to do to just be an adult for an hour where you're not, just kind of servicing the child or servicing your partner, or this kind of like you instantly become this kind of like glue of your family unit, especially once you have the baby, and you really to feel your own independence and your personhood. I think by the time I had my second daughter, I had this mantra from my first that was your motherhood is only as valuable as your personhood. So it's like you can only, and that's true with everything, right? Whether it's like your siblinghood, your parenthood, your relationship, your whatever role you are, is like that every role you are is an extension of a being that you are. And so if you can't really nourish and care for and acknowledge what your being needs to feel whole and alive and affirmed in this lifetime and space, it's really hard to deliver in roles,
Wow, that's just the way you put it just makes so much sense. It's like you've got to take care of you before you can
and
roles.
And it feels obvious, right? Like it's feels, like, and it feels like the thing you hear all the time where you're like, put the oxygen mask on yourself.
First.
And I think the hardest thing ever is the things that are easier said than done, right? Like it is just really hard to, that's why I always say is that it's like self-care is only something to be claimed. Like no one will give it to you, and you'll barely ever give it to yourself. Like you have to claim it every time. Like you, in a world that tells you not to love yourself because you're not pretty enough and you're not smart enough and you're not skinny enough and you don't look like this person on a magazine cover, and you didn't get this injection here and you didn't get this thing. All these things where like the world constantly tells you you're flawed so they can like give you or sell you or make you want to be something that is not flawed. Like it's radical to claim love of yourself. It is radical to claim a type of care for yourself that is outside of like this kind of like specific pop culture, aesthetic, space, or norm. Like it's really a radical thing, and it's a claiming and reclaiming, and you're gonna have to claim it every single time. And I think that's what is like the missing step for people. And so even in postpartum, at your most depressed, it's kind of hard to claim it is only a self-claiming where you're like, no, I'm going to like claim what I want for myself until it arrives. So like, even if I still don't feel great chemically, I'm going to say like, I'm going to build a life so that when my kind of hormones, because they calm down, and your kind of chemical life does find some type of balance, whether you are, have that help pharmaceutically or not, or however it is, but it does balance out. It still arrives in a lifestyle that held space for that balance to come, and not the opposite. So it's not like, oh, I did balance out, but I was still drove myself crazy and like, trashed my adrenals and was like so tired and so exhausted and da-da-da-da-da. And I felt 2% better because my chemical self kind of realigned. If you build a life that like you can feel so happy in, once your chemical self realigns, you're like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden I felt like I was on a high, which is why I could probably like write my books later, because I'd be like, wait, okay, I feel horrible. I'm going to make sure I get in the bath every night. I'm going to make sure I still like, I start talking to my therapist about how I feel horrible and not like talk to them about the ways in which like someone in my life is driving me crazy. Right. Or like, I'm going to make sure that I like see my girlfriends on this day. I'm going to make sure that I say, you know, like I really need, you know, the babysitter to come at this time because if I can get 2 more hours of sleep, that would change everything for me. Or, you know, and build this kind of structure that would hold a really like excited to be a live person. So even if I couldn't feel like that person in that structure, that I know that structure provides that for me.
I love that because no one else is going to do it for you. Nobody knows what's going on in your body. And you're, you know, just claiming.
And they benefit from you not, to be clear. Like everyone benefits from you wanting to be a workaholic or exhausted or like, no, don't worry, I'll get the baby.
Yes.
Or, no, don't worry, I got it. Or I'll bring her. I'll do this. Like everyone benefits from you like, you know, wringing yourself out.
Exactly. But they'll also benefit even more if it's the true Cleo, right?
Yes.
Get Cleo back from this.
And
this
because
fog.
by the way, once they finish benefiting, at the end of the day, they're just like, "What do you mean you don't want to go to dinner? Or you don't want to do this?" Or like, "Oh my God, don't you think that'd be fun?" And if you're always saying, "No, I'm too tired," like you know, they start to miss their buddy.
Of course, yeah. They're like, "Where's Cleo? Bring her back." But you and you do a lot of these type of illustrations in your book. You illustrated the book yourself, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't illustrate my first kid's book, but I did this one.
This was amazing. Like what made you do it on so you didn't do it on the first time. And then the second time you were like, I'm going to just go for it. Or was it?
My first book, I had this real like vision for it feeling like at the time when I was putting that book out, every kid's book kind of looked like very like kind of like digital. It's like if they had eyes, the eyes were like really, really round and the faces were really round and like it looked like they were designed on a computer. And so for my first book, I really wanted it to feel like Madeline or Little Prince or something that felt very like painterly. And so that's why I found this person who could really paint what felt like, you know, a series of kind of these like moving landscape paintings. But for this book, it was so personal because you know, the title is May You Love and Be Loved. And my first daughter's middle name is Love and my second daughter's middle name is Beloved. And so it's their middle name. So it's May You Love and Be Loved, wishes for your life. And so because it was a series of wishes for them, I looked at, 200 different illustrators and none of it felt right. And then my editor finally said, you know, I think you don't like any of it because you should just do it. And I was like, well, I don't even know I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I have no idea how to draw anything. Like I could, and so I basically locked myself away for like, a month and I just taught myself how to draw different objects. And I would truly like Google, I'd be like, what does a spaceship look like? I mean, my Google that month must have been insane. It was like...
It must have been like she's off her rocker.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I want to share something that could literally slow down how you age, inside and out. Let's talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT. You've probably heard of it being used for athletes or wound healing. But what you may not know is the latest research is showing powerful benefits for cellular regeneration, brain health, and even reversing some biological markers of aging. Hyperbaric chamber works where you breathe in oxygen at higher than normal pressure. This process stimulates your tissues with oxygen and beyond what your body can normally get in. That extra oxygen jumpstarts your cells, helps natural repair processes, reduces inflammation, and boosts collagen production. It even stimulates the growth of new blood vessels. Studies have shown improvements in telomere length, which are kind of like protective caps on your DNA that shorten as you age. Longer telomeres, that's linked to healthier aging. If you're feeling the effects of aging, maybe it's slower recovery, brain fog, or skin that's lost its luster and glow, hyperbaric oxygen might be a powerful tool to help you feel sharper, stronger, and more vibrant. Go to oxyhealth.com, that's OXYHEALTH.com, and type in discount code HealthyDoc10 for your first order. It's so well done, and I know you started off writing it for the kids, and then you were just like, no, I want this to be for everyone. Because it's as an adult reading this too, a child to. It's actually kind of nice. And I like this one. I wish I had this book when I was growing up. May there be nights you stay up too late. My parents were so sticklers about me getting to bed early, and I just wanted like 1 or 2 nights to stay up late because the music was too good to go home early.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just, it's just so beautifully done.
Well, it's also just a reminder of flexibility. I mean, like, what is the point of the rules if you create rules that no one can respect, right? Like, people really respect things where they feel seen and heard in it too. And I have that a lot with my own kids, where I'll be like, okay, I really want them to get this amount of sleep or do this thing. And then you have to be like, okay, but their grandma's in town and they have to leave town tomorrow. So if they want to stay up an extra hour because they all get to have this memory of snuggling in bed with their grandparents so that they could, you're like, it's kind of worth it to be tired the next day, in the same way that if I'm in New Orleans and I want to go out dancing really late right before my flight and I'm miserable on the flight, but it was kind of worth it. Those things are applicable even to like how you're kind of raising your kids. And I felt like when I was writing this too, it's like, from having to read kids' books, that your kids usually want to read the same books over and over again.
Yes.
And it gets so annoying, especially if they're kind of just like only silly. And so I also felt that in a world, and especially in America, where, religion is declining and kind of like religious kind of congregating is declining in so many ways. I wanted something that could feel like an evening prayer for a family, like something where it is these ideas of like things and ideas to live by and share, and to grow up that always kind of being in the back of their head to try the new things or take seriously only the things that are meant to be serious, or, just having those kind of subconscious mantras that I think in some cases the 10 Commandments could have given for people that, 15, 20 years ago, because they just had to go to church every Sunday.
Right.
But because we do culturally kind of do less and less of that now, I always hope that my books can just be these kind of words to live by.
They're such beautiful words. And there was one, and I was looking for it in here, that I read, and you talk about, may you call everybody your neighbor.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if I'm saying it right. What was the actual?
May you travel to places near and far, and I'm going to butcher, but it says, and treat all that you encounter like a next door neighbor.
Yes.
And that was because we, when my kids are, if we're kind of, over at the Country Mart or something getting ice cream, and my kids are always wearing like a psychotic outfit. Like they are.
Tell
like
me
my
more.
No, they have like my kids wear princess dresses every day. I mean, my kids are in costume all the time, and I can't understand it, and it doesn't feel like something I should understand, so I just go with it.
Right.
But they're just very, they go to New Orleans so often. They go to Mardi Gras every year. They go to Jazz Fest. But they've kind of like taken it too far. Like we were riding down the street recently, and because Halloween's just passed, and those kind of Halloween pop-up shops that come up in the neighborhood, and they like ride by and they're like, Mom, look, it's a Mardi Gras store. Like even when my daughters are going through the holidays, they're like, oh my gosh. So it's Thanksgiving, and then it's Christmas, and then it's Hanukkah, and then it's my birthday, and then it's Mardi Gras, and then it's Grandpa's birthday, and then it's Jazz Fest, and then it's like, and they think that those are like the same type of holidays as like Thanksgiving and Christmas and Halloween.
I love it.
And so I think that they're very eccentric in this way. Like they always have like they look nuts. And so because of that, if we are anywhere and so someone will be like, I like your dress, because they're probably like caught themselves staring at the child.
Yeah.
So they were probably like, I guess I should say something complimentary. And so I always tell my kids to say thank you, neighbor. And, and to just kind of know that, that we are linked and we are connected and we are neighbors. And this idea of that we isolate or live in this otherness is part of why we don't want to listen to others, and we don't want to like connect to them, or that we assume we have nothing in common with them, or we like
that
decide.
We're separate.
Yeah. And so I try to just even at least with language, hope that our language can feel connective, if that makes sense.
That's so beautiful. And I really think that is at the bare bones of what this world needs, is that we really need to be calling everybody our neighbor, and that we're all equal, and that we are neighbors, and if our neighbor suffers, we suffer.
Yeah, and we're all important. Like, I think a lot of the things just will feel that like they're not this, so they're not important, or like I feel this way, or they don't agree with me, or this idea that like, our ideas can be in conflict without us being in conflict. I think that's a really tough one, and how can we be respectful of those whose ideas are in conflict and not just be like, you're wrong or you're a bad person because your ideas are in conflict with mine. But a lot of that has to do with like some form of hierarchy you must have in your head about like, who are the people who know things and who are the people who don't? Who are the people who are right about things and who are the people who aren't? And that you've created some type of layers of like, whether it's smart or not smart or rich or not rich or whatever class or whatever it is, you've decided who gets to be right about certain things and who doesn't. But if you have approached the world with this kind of great equalizer of like, your experience creates some type of understanding that I perhaps don't know about. So you feel the way you feel, and I don't think or know how to agree with that, and I don't see it. But I do know that you're allowed to have your experience, and you're allowed for your experience to dictate what you feel or you think. And I'm allowed for that to want, make maybe a boundary between us, but that doesn't have to be like a you're lesser than or whatever.
I love that. I love that. So beautiful. Well, I want to end with a question I'm going to ask you, actually.
Okay, I'm excited.
Because you know what I do, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously you say you follow me intently on Instagram, so let's test your Instagram.
Okay.
So I want to ask you, how many, I talk about poop a lot, right? How many bowel movements a day do you think is normal for someone?
2 to 3.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
I don't achieve that personally, but I think that is what a healthy
bowel. You'd be a high
is.
achiever here, Cleo.
I'm too. I'm
okay,
too.
That's good. Well formed and it sinks. Okay, well, we're gonna put your poop to the test.
Okay.
I am going to I'm going to give you a gift of goodies.
I'm excited.
Which you can share with Simon as well.
I'm not going to share it with him, but that's okay.
Not the poop test.
Okay.
I hope you won't share the poop test.
Okay.
So this is a 3-day poop test.
Okay.
And it tells us what's living inside your gut microbiome. So we talked about, it's an inside job. Everything is an inside job. So I'm going to measure how many bacteria are living in there, how many good bacteria are living in there, how you're digesting, how you're absorbing. And then once you finish this, we will get on a call, either in person or on a Zoom, and I will review this with you, and we will go through a full gut revamp plan.
I'm obsessed.
So, I mean, of course, you're going to get a poop test from Dr. Nigma as a little gift.
I'm
and
obsessed.
along with some other goodies, the vitamin C cocktails in here, cortisol balancers for Simon. So that's his.
That's his. That gets messenger to our house all the time.
I know, I see it. So I was like, I have to include something for Simon, otherwise he'll never forgive me.
Yeah.
But Cleo, it was such an honor to have you
Oh my gosh, thank you
podcast.
so much. What a pleasure.
Thank you for coming. And everybody, if they want to find your books and your, where can people find you? Where can they find
wherever
your
you
books?
buy your books, you can find these books. So whether it's we always hope that you'll shop at your local bookstore and keep small businesses alive in your community, since they are so enriching of our lives and build such amazing communities. So we hope for a local independent bookstore. And if you're just a gal on the go and you got to get it wherever you got to get it there.
Yeah. And where can people find you? Where can people learn more about your work?
I am on Instagram.
She
Cleo
is.
Wade.
If you're not following her, you are missing out. She has an inspirational quote every single day of some sort, and her writing is beautiful. Cleo, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure.